So today on the Game Alone podcast, I'm delighted to introduce Tej Singh. And for those of you, the 1% of the population that don't know who Tej is, Tej is the popular presenter of the Tej Talks podcast, but also there he is with his distinctive yellow t-shirt on. Haven't sold in any colour scheme at all. And also a property investor in his own right. So I wanted to start by thanking Tej for coming on, and also, of course, giving you a bit of an opportunity just to give us a bit of a background as to who you are, what you do, and then we'll get straight into it. So Tej, over to you for a couple of minutes, if that's all right.
Sure. So I went to university, King's College London, great uni, great degree, biochemistry, happy days, graduated, cool. Took me 40 interviews to get my first job. Had my first job, that was cool. Everyone was staying back past 5, and I kind of thought, wait, but we get paid until 5. What is this hour of time we're just giving? So that was my first sort of thing in my life where I was like, okay, I don't like this. I then left that job to take a 40% pay rise, which was pretty awesome when I was 23. I was like, hell yeah. I then discovered the ethics of the pharmaceutical industry, or should I say the lack of, which then I basically got fired from my second job. Age 23, took me 40 interviews to get to this position, my second job, and I got fired. But weirdly, I felt quite liberated. I felt free, which was not normal, because I should have been crap, references, new job, how is this going to work? And then I set up a recruitment business, obviously a very ethical business as well. I didn't learn my lesson there. I had a friend who was going to help me set it up because he'd set one up. I'm still waiting for that help. So it was pretty much a one-man show the whole time. I got quite lonely and became a recluse in this business. And I guess it's what you call golden handcuffs, making money, but I didn't enjoy it. Did that for about 3.5 years, I'd say. And then about 8 or coming up to 9 months ago, I went full-time into property. Before that, kind of 6 months before, I was finishing off recruitment. I was doing some contracting, making some easy money. I was learning about property. I was meeting people, networking, doing podcasts, buying people dinner, buying people's coffee to understand what the hell is property, what is BRR, what's HMO, how does this work? Just immersing myself. And then I guess also trying to do property, thinking I was doing viewings, doing one a week, that was going to get me anywhere. And I think what we all go through that, oh yeah, I'm in property, but there's no results. And then as soon as I went full time, it just freed up my time, my mental headspace, everything to just go ham at it. And yeah, I've bought 15 properties now in the last 8 months, with pretty much every single refurb, every single purchase, apart from the first 1 or 2, funded by investors. So, as people like to say, very little money in, if any, over the past sort of 6 months of that 8 months.
Cool. So, I mean, I'm loving that arc which actually follows, I think, where a lot of people that want to get into property, that's how they envisage their arc being, which is working normally, start to get into property a little bit, and then get to a point where I can start doing it full time. And I've always been thinking that you found that quite nicely. And so one thing that's certainly popped into my head from what you just said is, when did you feel it was the right time to then go full time into property? I know we probably sort of jumped a few stages, but it's the first thing that popped into my head, which was quite important. When was the moment where you said, yeah, do you know what, I'm comfortable now, I'm gonna go at this head on and do this full time?
Sure. So mentally, I was already full-time in my recruitment business. I was already kind of full-time self-employed. So for me, there was no mental shift, which there is a big one when you go from being employed. I think the longer you're employed by someone, the proportionately harder it gets to go self-employed, because you're in such a routine, such a habit, such a state. But I was 6-8 months in my first job, changing was not really a big thing. I at university used to sitting home on my ass revising. So the mental shift wasn't there. For me, the most important thing was so I buy to let. So they take, usually, mine thankfully haven't take ages in conveyancing, ages to find, ages to refurb, ages to let. And they do take ages to refurb and let and things like that. To actually bring in money, it takes time. So I was like, I need at least, looking back at it, I probably had 12 months of savings I live at home, minimal kind of outgoings. Insurance, petrol is probably the biggest outgoing, but that's some of it's covered by like the company. For me, it was 12 months of savings. It was, to be honest, that was the main sort of like tick box that I was like, I need to have this, because I know if I was doing rent to rent, I could quit my job very quickly. If I was doing rent to SA, not now with the virus, but I could quit my job quickly. So yeah, 12 months of savings. And it was the right time when I was just getting nowhere being, part-time. I was thinking, yeah, I'm putting in work and yeah, it takes time, but I just know if I had 5 days a week to be viewing, to be doing this, it would just like totally transform the business. And I had the savings and I was like, you know what, I'm sick of recruitment. It's time. So I think for most people, as long as you have the financial security, which is not easy if you've got kids and a mortgage and pets and cars and all this stuff, I think that for me is the biggest advice, is just be financially secure for X amount of time.
So it's basically knowing your burn rate, what it could sort of a business terminology, and understanding how long you think it's going to be until the next paycheck comes in, and understanding that. And what you sort of described then is you got to that point where I suppose it was like a tipping point where you realised that actually I can't grow anymore on the property side unless I do go into it full time. So was that sort of it? Was that you were kind of just thinking,
yeah,
I can't do any more now?
100%. It's like, and look, there's so many people who do it like part-time, who I've interviewed on my podcast and I've met, and I'm sure you've met as well, who are just, you're like, wow, how are you doing this part-time? Like, it's incredible. Right? But I just couldn't. And I struggle with focus, which my meditation has been a really big thing for me, but like I struggle to do one thing at one time. I want to do 10 things at once just because I just enjoy it, but it's stupid. It doesn't work necessarily. So I, for my own sort of self, had to stop recruitment and just be like, no, you know what? Let me do property, because within property, there'll be 101 things anyway. So I guess it suited me better to just cut it out, whereas some people can do both and have kids and have family and be great with it. I wouldn't have been able to.
And be able to sort of compartmentalize, as you would say. I lost you there, I think.
Yep. So that question again, did.
So I was just saying you're kind of compartmentalizing then, if you're having to try and do too many things at once and really block out everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And we can do that and we have to do it daily, but it was so much easier on a bigger picture to just cut it, basically.
Absolutely. So I suppose it's been a pretty meteoric rise, if you like, in a relatively short space of time, from that moment where you went, right, I'm going, hell for leather, I'm going all in with property to where we are now. 8 months, you mentioned. How many projects have you been involved with then since in that time?
So I definitely feel like a meteor. Definitely feel rough, like I'm on fire, like I'm flying through the sky. I mean, it's a good way to describe how I feel most of the time. I think I didn't decide at the beginning. Someone said to me the other day, one of my friends, they were like, Ted, do you remember when you first started? And I said to you, how many houses do you want? And you were like, oh, if I get 3 by the end of the year, I'll be really happy. And then you went and got bloody 10. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. So I started off mentally in my situation. I was like, right, I've got this much money. I can probably do 3. What I didn't think was, what if I add another 0 to the end of it, which, through investors, through bridges, through whatever, what could I do? I based my future goals off my current situation, which is not necessarily the right thing to do, because I'm going to be a different person tomorrow. I'm going to raise 100 grand tonight. I'm going to raise, so it didn't start off like that, but it's been 15 projects. Some are let, some are on the market, which can't get let because of this. Some are in refurb. Some, 2 are in legals. One's completing next week. Well, I believe it's completing next week. Who knows what's happening with this? And it's gone from 0 to 1.3 million in this time in terms of the portfolio value. So it's been incredibly stressful. Like, that sounds great. And it's like, oh my God, wow, 1 million. But it is very, very tough. And again, with buy-to-lets, they bring in 250. Mine probably bring in between 300 to 350 self-manage, because nothing to manage. You need a lot of them, right, to generate something useful, which means I need 4 projects, whereas your HMO friend needs 1.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have 4 times the bullshit, basically 4 times the sites to be. It is harder, which I didn't think about, and I don't think about, because I'm like, I don't really care, because what else am I going to do? You know what I mean? Like, this is my business, is my passion. If it wasn't hard, I'd just fall asleep. It'd be so boring.
Well, I was going to say that there's one way of looking at it, which is hard work, but the other way is it's rewarding, right? And it's I
Yeah,
suppose you must be pretty satisfied with where you are now compared to where you were 8 months
without a doubt. I think, I say this often, I can, with the cash flow coming in, I can quit life. I can be Tim Ferriss. I can travel the world, have a man
ago.
bun, just be a hipster, right? Single speed bike, all of that shit. But I don't want to, but I could. Now, I want people to hear that, who are maybe stuck in jobs they don't like, or being in a corporate for 10, 15, whatever, to hear that in 8 months, plus 6 months of learning, you could retire, or you could have enough money to travel the world, or to do whatever you want to do. That is intensely rewarding. The cash flow hasn't come in yet, and that's another thing, because of delays, because of, let a property, agent takes the first month. So, there's lots of reasons why it takes time to actually reach that cash flow. But when it's all let and when it's all done, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And they're buy to let, so they're passive.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot of hard work. It's taken tons of mistakes and challenges and things like that. But I want people to know that you can get this financial freedom and all this stuff that people promise, but it comes at a cost, and that cost will be your health, potentially. It'll be your relationships. It'll be whatever. So yeah.
But it can be short term, in the grand scheme of things. When you think of the life expectancy of a normal human being, 8 months plus 6 months, it's not a long period of time, really. As long as you're willing to put, really focus your attention and prioritize that time in doing that. And I find, with my clients, I do tend to get them on each side of the spectrum. Either this is too hard, Sam, I don't know what, I want to go at a snail's pace, and I envisage not being able to get this done, to the other side, which is really unrealistic, maybe, which is, this is going to be easy and I'm going to be a millionaire in 22 weeks' time. And so it's nice, I think, how you described it, Tej, is actually the reality of it. It is possible to do what you've done, but as long as you prioritize it, you learn, you go all in, and as you said, some maybe compromise a little bit of yourself for a shorter period of time, because now you are in a situation where, if you wanted to, give it a couple of months, let the coronavirus get out of our system. Literally, probably a poor choice of words there. But then you could, maybe just give all of your properties to a property manager and go travel the world.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Which is pretty awesome. So, in terms of a lot of people I speak to, they don't know where to start. That's the big thing. I always say to them, just start. Knowing you need to start is probably the most important thing. But take us all the way back to your first property project. How did you? What was it? How did you find it? And when I say how did you find it, not in terms of physically looking for it, but how did you find the entire process? And
sure.
what could other people that are in that position that you were in then kind of maybe learn from any mistakes you made?
Sure, great question. So it was through a deal sourcer, so I didn't have to find it. And they also managed a refurb not very well. They were also very expensive. I still know them to this day, and I'm very clear and upfront to them that you are overpriced. But at the time, it was my first deal. I'd been watching sort of this area and them for a while, and I was like, you know what? This stacks. And like you said, if I didn't start, I wouldn't start. As simple as that sounds. So I was like, yes, the fee's a bit blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you why the fee and stuff didn't actually matter in the long run, which I didn't necessarily see then. It was a 3-bed house. It was magnolia. It was nice laminate flooring. It was fresh, and it was livable. Bay window needed fixing, had a bit of damp, needed a little kitchen, repaint. But honestly, like, it was fine. Like, it would have rented out as is if I fixed the damp. So we spent about $6,000 on it. It should have been 5. There was a lintel, which was made out of wood, not concrete, which ridiculous, needed replacing. And to be honest, the $5,000 was way too much. Looking back at it, like, I don't know what the hell they did for that $5,000, but it was not worth it. Now I know with $5,000, I've transformed houses for $5,000, but spent $6,000 on it. So bought it for $50,000. The important thing here is the sourcer put the offer in like 5 months before. This house had been on the market for a year. He'd put an offer in. 5 months later, they came back and said, are you still on it? And then it got sourced to me. But when you're sourcing yourself, that's the kind of stuff that you're going to experience, right? Like just this stuff happening. So in of itself, it was a bargain. It probably would have revalued, next day. If I bought it for 50, it would have easily revalued at like 75, 70, like without a doubt. Spent 5, 6 on it, freshened it up, blah, blah, blah. Got a tenant in. We waited 6 months to refinance because it was my first deal. And there were a few other reasons why we waited. I also bought it unencumbered with cash. I was meant to bridge, but the broker messed it up, and it's not a broker I use anymore at all. So it was like a week before completion. It was like, I was like, right, family member, what are you saying? You got all this money in these ISAs. Let's talk about some serious percentage. So they invested, they funded it, and because it was unencumbered, long story, which I'm sure you'll explain on a separate podcast, and you have, I'm sure, is I used it to double bridge or dual bridge and buy 2 other houses. Anyways, bought it in cash at 50, spent 6 on it, waited 6 months, got it rented out at 525 per month, which is above market, even though it's not my usual swag. It's not special or anything. It's just nice buy to let. It's tidy though. It's very nice. 6 months later, got revalued at 80k, bang on, pulled out 60. I think we were all in for 64,300. So it left 4,300 in the deal. So all in all, including the sourcing fee and project management, it's a pretty much, it could have been a no money left in deal if I bought it myself. So yeah, that was my first deal. Challenges: bad builder, bad project manager, doing the garden, de-weeding it and putting gravel on it myself, which, as fun as moving a ton of gravel from the pavement into my car, then from my car into the garden on the back lane, basically moving 3 tons was good exercise. It was not the right thing or the smart thing to do. I had to get a gardener to come tidy up. Anyway, that was great. But, it was a learning experience in knowing when to just cut someone off and say, you're off the job. Bye. Like, I'm ruthless now when it comes to it. So
all you need
lessons
to do
there, but
is keep tabs on your Instagram stories to see how ruthless you can be.
no comment. I call it honesty, but
yeah, I completely agree.
But yeah, that was my
from that. The interesting point is I didn't realise that you've got a deal sourcer to help you with your first deal. And yeah, I think there are deal sources and then there are deal sources. And some are a lot better than others, as I'm sure both of us know very, very well. I've often thought that actually a deal sourcer for your first deal actually is not a bad place to go to, because it alleviates some of the issues that first-time investors come up against. So even though you maybe didn't have the best experience in the world, would you still think that actually, if a first-time investor is listening and is struggling with, right, I need to go on 1,000,001 viewing tomorrow, and I also need to find my finance, and I also need to do this, and I also need to do that, would you recommend deal sourcing as your first-time project, or even just using one moving forward for all projects, if that was?
Yes. Yeah. So I always say this, but industries like personal trainers, recruitment consultants, estate agents have a low barrier to entry. What qualifications do you need to do these? Not a lot. So whereas doctors, you got 10 years of training. So naturally you get more bad personal trainers than you do doctors. That's just like statistics. Yeah. Same with deal sources. It's put as, the way to get into property, the way to make a couple grand, then piss off and buy your own houses. A lot of sources are not in it for the passion or because they really, really enjoy it. They're in it as a stepping stone, which means they're stepping on someone somewhere. And I'm buying buy-to-lets. I'm passionate about this. This is no stepping stone. This is my thing. So I'm doing it properly and thoroughly. Whereas when you're doing something as a stepping stone, let's be real, you're not going to do it as properly. So for people looking at deals, their first deal, yes, using a sourcer can be great and for the exact reasons you said. However, don't trust them for those exact reasons. Like, don't think, you know what, they're a sourcer. They've done their DD. Their figures, they must be correct. No. Send it to someone more experienced. Send it to your broker. A lot of brokers are property investors. Send it to people who can be like, look at it as a non-emotional, this is just a spreadsheet deal. Because you're looking at, it's my first deal, get on the ladder. They're looking at it like, it's a spreadsheet. So, and also obviously analyze it yourself, but don't just instantly trust them because they're a sourcer. Make sure they've got the various qualifications. I can't remember exactly what they are, but make sure they're compliant. I like sources with a personal brand because the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? If they mess up or they want to play games, you have something to go at, to put it
Leverage.
bluntly. Yeah. Whereas if they're an unknown person with 2 friends on Facebook, then, well, sucks. What can you do about it?
And they
So
could just run up into the distance and into the sunset and never
yeah,
be heard of again.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's not to say people with brands don't do that, because I'm sure Facebook has, plenty of examples. But yeah, look, use sources, and moving forward, of course, if you can afford it and it works in the deal and they're good and you can trust them and you maybe work out some sort of deal with them, or like if you're buying lots, then yeah, absolutely use them. But like, honestly, you have to do your due diligence, because on them, but more importantly on the deal. Like, I don't really, yes, I have to get along with the sourcer, but if the deal stacks but they're a bit irritating, I'll buy the deal because the deal works.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about figures at the end of the day and making sure they work. And I think
Hmm.
the reason why I actually asked that question was that you were talking about this deal pretty much being kind of a money in, money out deal. And yes, if you think about the annual yield that you're getting as a percentage of the money that was left in, that return on investment on that first deal was pretty nice. Much better
Yeah.
than you're going to get by sticking that same amount in a bank anyway,
Yeah.
especially given with the interest rates at the moment. But in terms of like that money in, money out deal, you did borrow money from investors. And I think this is something that I get asked a lot because as a broker, I'm still quite a big advocate of my clients looking at all aspects of how they can finance deals and utilizing angel investors. We don't use that terminology with lenders because they get very scared and frightened by those kind of those words. But other people investing and being part of it, or using crowdfunding or whatever it might be. The difficulty sometimes is getting all of that money back out. And so it is quite troubling to somebody that's starting out thinking, well, okay, yes, I understand the concept of buy, refurbish, refinance, get money out, go again, and pay back my investor. But what, if you said, your first deal, you left, four odd grand in that deal. Whose money
Hmm.
was that? Was that actually your own, or was that money that was meant to go back to an investor?
So because I put some of my own money in this deal, like I think I put in like 20 grand, it was probably my own money. But let's say it wasn't. Let's say, looking at all the other deals where I'm leaving in 5 grand on most deals or less, you're right. Let's say, Sam, you gave me 40 grand, done the BRR, blah blah blah. I owe you 40 grand plus interest, but I've only pulled out 35. Where's the 5 grand coming from? There's a
Yeah,
few ways of doing this. The first way, which I had in my head, was using my savings, for my like my business savings for my recruitment business as a cost. As just, okay, I've got an asset. If I have to put 5 grand in to get a whole freaking house, I mean, I ain't complaining. Savings. Not everyone has that. Fine. Secondly, you can say to your investor from day one, look, we're going to leave in 5 grand. Are you happy to loan me? And then this, and then based off that, I'll pay you all the rent for the first 2 years. Or we leave your money in for 5 years and you get a bit of residual income from the rent every month to pay that off. Some will be okay with it. If they're not a property investor, they're just Tom, Dick, and Harry, works in a bank, they don't know about BRR. They're probably expecting to leave in a lot more than that. So it's all about working with the right investors. But what I actually do is, because I want to give them their money back, that's just the agreement we have, is I do flips. So I flip properties, which obviously means you then need more money, but I flip properties. All the profit from that doesn't go to buying new clothes. I literally have one t-shirt, right? Like, it goes to
I
paying
reckon you've
investors
got more
off.
than one Tej Talks t-shirt. There must be more
I've probably got like 7. But like, that money goes to paying off investors. So I only flip for them. I don't flip for my own self, which would be great, chunks of cash, but it's not. Every
Yeah.
flip probably generates 15 grand for me. That's
Mhm.
3 investors, 5 grand covering the holes. So yeah, I flip to cover it, which I don't know why more people don't do or more people don't talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a harder way to do it. I don't know.
It's amazing, and I'm glad that you brought that up, actually, because it was something I was going to ask you about later on. I do go beyond where a normal broker would would have conversations with clients, because I have been doing it a decent while. I do understand strategy. I've done developments myself in the past, so I understand it from both sides. And I often do talk to clients that start out and say, have you thought about sort of a varied strategy where maybe you might do, a flip, then two buy-to-lets, a flip, then two buy-to-lets, because you are sort of replenishing your own funds, even if they're your own funds. But one thing that I always get as a kind of a comeback to that from clients with objection is, well, what if I can't sell it? Have you come up against a situation yet where you haven't been able to sell a flip and you've had to, you've had to actually then refinance it and change the strategy on it?
I've done that once from a flip to a keeper because I wanted to, and because I had to sell one of my keepers because of a crappy project manager underestimating refurb. So I've done it consciously and not in a negative way, just to switch. And actually, I got a great valuation, so I'm much prefer I kept it. I have a flip at the moment that is struggling to sell. It's the truth, man. Not everything, like we know on Facebook sells the next day, right? No matter how nice you make it, sometimes it doesn't. But I've learned a lot from this flip. Now, at the price I could let it go at, there's still 6, 7, 8 grand profit in it, depending on what it goes for. Now, that's not a lot, and that's really not ideal. However, that's profit. I'm not breaking even. I'm not taking a loss. My investor's getting paid back full with interest, and there's this on top. Because I put such big margins in, and I'm like, nope, if it hasn't got this much room, I just won't buy it, which is why, I don't find that many deals, which sounds crazy, but I'm sure that I could have found more. Because I'm so tight on the entry, your money's made, like when you buy it, potentially you can argue about when your money's made, but if you buy at a good price, you've locked in some profit from day one. So because of that, I don't, if I come across that situation, I haven't done something right on the entry. It's the wrong area. It's the wrong price. Something, it's my fault. Yes, coronavirus is stopping things selling. Yes, there could be factors outside of my control, but I think everything's in my control. Everything is in our control. So I haven't come across it, but I also know in certain situations, if I had to sell it for this amount, I know based on comparables, I could revalue it this amount. So again, having a margin and knowing where things sit in it protects my investors. And that's just good business thinking, I guess.
So have you found that actually then, because I know that obviously there's got to have to be a lot of overlap to get to the level of income and value of property that you've reached in such a short period of time. I do know that a lot of investors are trying to think transactionally. They're thinking, right, I do one, then I do another, then I do another. But it sounds as though the advice that maybe you might give would be that actually, if you can find the investors and you can get the funding, actually doing more than one at any one time, yes, it might be a bit more of a drag on your time and maybe your sanity, but certainly that can help because you can switch things up. If one property that you rent to flip isn't likely to sell anymore and you need to switch it over, then maybe one of the other 2 or 3 that you've got on the go could end up then being that flip, and that's where that money comes back in and you've got a bit more control. Would that be correct in thinking?
Yes, and no, but no is only on your risk profile and your goals and how willing you are to lose a bit of sanity. And so what you said is correct. When you have a few plates, you can shift things between them and balance it and make it all work as a big picture. When you have one, you got one. So if you fucked it, you fucked it. So yes, but not everyone wants to be doing that because it's not easy and it's not hard work. And sometimes I sit there for an hour to make a decision. Are we going ahead with this mortgage, even though I got undervalued by 5K in my opinion, and the appeal didn't come back? Am I selling or am I keeping this? For hours, or just, I'll walk outside, I'll be thinking, the hell do I do? Whereas one property, it's a bit less. So yes, if you're up for it, no, if you want it to be easier and simpler. But, for example, having multiple deals rarely happens at once. I mean, yeah, I've had like 4 or 5 refurbs on at one time, and now I have 4, about to be 6, but some of them will be finished. That's the beauty of it, because conveyancing takes this long. And if you're at auction, you don't have to complete in 2 days. You can wait 28 days. Nowadays, I wait 28 days. I'm like, my build team aren't ready. I'm easy. 28 days, fine. We can do it whenever. Yeah. What that means is there's a month between a few houses or a few refurbs. That means, well, you're not actually juggling too many things in refurb, which is probably quite a dangerous stage because of what can go wrong compared to the whole thing, as it may seem. Or maybe I'm just used to it and I'm just like, yeah, maybe I'm under explaining it. I don't know.
I think you explained it pretty well actually. Actually, there's people think of, like, I'm in property and I buy, and then they think of the whole thing as one big just single transaction. whereas actually
Mm.
it is split into loads and loads of different stages. And I suppose, to be honest, I can liken it a little bit to what I do as a broker. You know, I don't have all my cases in conveyancing. I have some of my cases that we're just applying, and I have some of my cases where we're waiting for valuations to come back. We've got some cases that are just got the offer, we're in conveyancing. Got others, maybe they're at exchange and we're just waiting to complete. And actually having a pipeline, which I suppose is similar to what you're sort of saying, you're staggering things, makes life a little bit easier, and you can manage it a little bit better in your head then. And also it allows you that time as well, because you've always got to be putting stuff in the top end of the funnel to be continually going out and finding new properties as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure as well, though, because you've got builders who you've told, look, I'm buying X many properties a month. I will give you all your business. You don't need to go anywhere else. And then when you start to not buy properties, you're like, shit, I don't want them to leave because. So and that pressure, I don't feel so much because I'm kind of buying enough, and some damp appears, and there's always some bloody issue. You know what I mean, on refurb. So it's fine, but that's the pressure. Actually, I probably don't talk about that much because I only realize it when I really think about it. Is that. And also relationships with agents and auction houses, right? If you're not buying often, I'm not going to necessarily forget you, but you want to be,
you're not top of their list. You're not in the forefront of their mind.
Which is pressure, because you're like, it's self-created pressure, but it is also real. So sometimes you're like, fuck, I need to buy my houses, but then I ain't got. So it's a lot of like just getting slapped by 100 people at once.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like that.
Do you know, I'm really glad that you said sort of talking about relationships, and because the next thing I was going to start talking to you about is the personal brand aspect. You mentioned previously, you dropped the terminology when you're talking about sources, because you are a massive advocate of this. That's how you and I met, was you talking at an event about personal branding, and that goes. It's not just about property; it's all aspects of business. So, obviously, I'd love to get your take on the importance of personal brand, and obviously even more so in the current climate where pretty much everyone's just online at the moment. There's no physical meetings taking place. But also, I suppose, touching on what you just said in terms of relationship buildings with all aspects of different people throughout the market, from agents to sources to builders to lenders to brokers, whoever it might be, and actually how important raising your profile is in terms of your overall business. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
So I think Gary Vee says this perfectly. It's like social media and your personal brand is the most important thing right now, because you could be making the most beautiful watches, the most expensive, and having a couple of sales and a few fans who are like, oh, these watches are incredible. But if you're not on social media, if you don't have a brand, you're missing out on 10, 20, 100 millions of people who could be seeing your business. If you're a property investor trying to raise money, but like if someone goes online and there's nothing about you apart from a company's house registration, you're technically, to them, you're like a nobody, because they're like, well, you said you got 30 houses, mate. I can't see them. I can't see your mistakes. I can't see the pictures. We believe what we see, which is not necessarily a good thing, but we do. So it's important to show people like the reality of who you are, what you're doing. It's important to like get your brand and business out there. Let's say we didn't have personal brands. Let's say we had a product, I don't know, a plant pot or something, right? It was incredibly innovative. We could have a whole brand around that would generate our sales. And, we wouldn't have to pay people on the phone to be cold calling. We wouldn't have to pay for ads necessarily. We just have to pay for it in time and creativity. But you can literally set up a business that sells a product, sells your time, sells something using Instagram. Look at Kylie Jenner, the first female billionaire, the first self-made billionaire or something. Yes, she had a boost from her sisters and stuff, but I mean, she used Instagram and she did freaking incredibly well. And you got to look at all these people in property that we know about, people that are like celebrities. How do you know about them? How, if X many whatever famous property celebrities walked into a room full of people and they said, right, we're looking for 100 grand, I bet you half of these people who are broke would say, yeah, I've got 100 grand. Yeah, I'll give it to you though, mate. You're a celebrity. I see what you're doing. I love your brand. I love your vision.
Yeah.
So I've kind of just thrown a lot of stuff there, but essentially in property anyway, it gives people an insight into who you are. So it builds like likeness. It allows them to trust you because they see what you're doing. They see you take a shithole into a beautiful house, get the valuation tick, get the rent tick, be an adult tick. I can invest in you. That's kind of credibility. But also they see other people engaging with you, right? Like someone's popular because you see other people talking to them, right? That's popular is like what you see. And it's the same with like your engagement. If people see people are engaging with you, it's like, oh, they must be legit. They must be real. People like them. I could put my money with them.
Yeah.
And people will be surprised at how much trust is built on social media.
But you know what? It's there's two things I wanted to pick up on that, and I'll try and put them in the right order. But firstly, you know, I'm all in on this anyway, as you know. You know, I'm one of those people that doesn't need convincing of the importance of having some kind of online presence, whatever that might be. I'm also a massive fan of Gary Vee as well, so we're singing from the same hymn sheet. One of the surprising things that I have learned in the last sort of 18 months, where I've been consciously doing things to try and, I didn't realise it was called a personal brand when I first started, but what it's, you know, that's what it's become, is that for me, I'm in a service industry. I am selling a service. You know, as a broker, I will do this for people, and it's a very people-orientated business, very relationship-led business. And one of the strange things that I've learned is that number one, I get less objections to anything that I say in terms of advice, because people are making decisions. They're looking at my videos on YouTube or listening to this podcast potentially, or doing whatever, and they're saying, right, there's this guy Sam, and then there's these two other brokers, and I'm going to listen to all of it. And at the end of the day, right, okay, I've decided that Sam is the guy that I want to be my broker. And so that barrier to entry, if you like, in terms of forming a relationship is 2 or 3 steps ahead from where it would be if I was just, you know, I had my number on a website, people calling up because they just wanted advice on a mortgage, you know. So the relationship is already there. It's allowed me to be myself a lot more because I'm able to just sort of just speak to them as normal human beings, and you know, instinctively, hopefully they're just trusting my advice because I've told everyone that them, by watching a YouTube video or whatever, that this is how I have structured this deal, or this is how I view this particular subject. So it's kind of a little bit like, you know, I've warmed them up, but they've made that decision to come to me. And I think that is something I didn't even think about. And I imagine it's probably similar to you, Tej, in that if you're asking for investors could invest their money anywhere, but they see something that you put out on Instagram, because guess what, they already follow you. Guess what, they've already watched the videos that you've done. Guess what, they've already seen you doing a tour around one of your properties. They've listened to your podcast. They know what you're all about. When they come to you, there's no sort of barriers there where you have to kind of convince them to invest in you, because they've already in their mind decided that you're the guy for them. It's just finding the right project that works for them.
Yeah, I think what you've basically said is the touch points. You know, the 7 touch points before a sale. You basically just said about 5 of them. So yeah, totally. People are, you know, I wouldn't say that I don't have to convince them. I have to explain to them how it works, because obviously I don't put the small details online. Whereas I think, say with the service industry, you being a broker, there's a fee which is a lot less than the money they would invest in me. So there is a bit more of a kind of, you know, 2 and 4 and stuff like that. But I know that most of them have had 5 touch points just naturally from me being me and this podcast and all that. So when it comes to speaking, yeah, the last 2 touch points are there. And people need to understand this, because this is incredible. You sit on your ass like we are right now. You put content out there from home, from wherever. And most pictures of my houses are not from me, they're from my builders, because I'm not on site every day. And people will want to give you money. You haven't had to go to a networking event, haven't had to like shake hands or awkwardly, whatever we're doing now. And you've raised money. Like I've had £57,000 in my account to buy a house after, touch points, follow me for 6 months, 8-minute phone call, couple of Instagram DMs back and forth, and the money was there. I mean, how else could you do this efficiently? I tell you, right? It's so powerful.
Yeah, and do you know what? The other thing that I was going to mention, which I guess kind of now follows on from this a little bit, is exactly what you just said in terms of touch points and people just knowing who you are. And I'm a great believer in telling people what you do. People forget that the best bit of marketing you can do is just to tell more people what you actually do. Yeah. And I've got a friend of mine who is an actor. He's not been in much. I saw him pop up as an extra the other day, and I texted him, I went, "I've just seen you." But he does a lot of stage stuff. But I was telling him he doesn't get the whole personal branding thing, and I think actors actually, people that are are actors in films or in musicians, actually personal brand can be even more important than in other areas. And I told him the story of, and I can't remember the name of the girl. She's in Game of Thrones, the ginger girl, Game of Thrones. I can't remember what her name is. She's married to one of the Jonas brothers. But she was quoted in a magazine not that long ago saying that she actually gets roles because she's got more followers on Twitter or Instagram than other actresses who are better actresses than she is, because it's all about promotion nowadays. And I tried to tell my friend, also called Sam, about this, and he just didn't seem to sort of wash with it. And I was basically saying, look, if you really push your social media presence for 12 months, you might be getting roles that you wouldn't otherwise get.
100%.
And but it's interesting, isn't it, how actually there might be other brokers out there that are better than me. There might be other property investors out there that are better than you. But we might get the clients or the investment just purely because we're putting ourselves out there, and that maybe the number of followers that you have on an Instagram account might be a gauge of the interest people have in what you do and the trust that people have in the information that you're providing them. It's a bit of a crazy world we live in when you think of it like that.
It is, and you're spot on. People are going to invest in us because of who we are. People are not going to invest in us because of who we are. But when you're out there, you're out there. So you're giving people an opportunity. You're literally saying, hi, a bunch of fish swimming along. You're the weird one jumping up and down. You're going to get noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. I was on a call last week with a couple that I've taken on. I'm doing a little bit of consultancy on social media now, and looking to build that out a little bit more because I love it. And I was explaining to them about the whole, having a presence, being out there, being visual, being seen. And I probably scared the living daylights out of them in all honesty, because I was telling them that they needed to be on all of these platforms. But do you, in terms of how you got into understanding social media and personal branding and stuff like that, where did you start from? And I know that social media and platforms and which ones are more vital are changing all the time, but if you were just starting out now and you didn't have a personal brand at all, what would you be doing maybe over the next couple of days to get that started? Would there be particular platforms you'd concentrate on? Would you go across all? Was there particular types of content that you would be putting out there? What would you do if you were literally starting from scratch but with the knowledge that you have?
Fine. So I'll answer the first part quickly. In recruitment, a lot of recruiters say the same thing. I'm a recruiter looking for this person. I've just come out of a meeting and I've got an amazing role. No one gives a shit. So boring, job ads. I was like, surely I can just do something different, because surely I can just write what I like. kept doing that. That got traction. That made me money. It built somewhat of a little brand. Not much, because I didn't really care about recruitment, to my detriment for the brand. But yeah, built a brand from there. And I think it was just like maybe YouTube videos, maybe like blogs and stuff. But I don't really know. I just learned by just doing and being like, oh, this is cool. On it, no one springs to mind, and no book or nothing springs to mind. Platforms and what would I do now? So I tell people Facebook and LinkedIn is probably the best platform, because Facebook has a great community. You can learn so much, and it's where everyone is, and it's fun. LinkedIn's a bit stuffy sometimes. LinkedIn is great because of the potential to find investors, and that you can type in Barclays Bank, VP, Middle East division, and you know what salary they're on roughly, and that they may, you can find investors. It's powerful. But not a lot of property people are using LinkedIn heavily, meaning there is a big gap there and a big niche for you to come in as whatever. Maybe it's the property teacher. Maybe it's like teaching people on LinkedIn how to invest in property, because a lot of people that want to, they got money for it, but they don't know how to, which is kind of what I'm in the process of doing. So I would say LinkedIn and Facebook. I want to say Instagram because I love it. It's so easy to use. It's just such a great platform. However, I've probably raised more money on Facebook than Instagram. I haven't raised any money off LinkedIn yet because I haven't taken it that seriously, but I think you can. In order of fun or what I want, it'd be Instagram, Facebook. In order of what I think people should do, Facebook, LinkedIn. Video content is huge, still is, with subtitles. You can use an app called headliner.com, and you can do it for free, or rev.com. They do it like 99p a minute or something, and subtitles are so accurate, like even with slang and like, so accurate.
Right.
Because a lot of videos are watched in silence, like at work when people are not supposed to. So video content is powerful. Images are really powerful. Text posts, they can be powerful, but it's that typical human thing of, I ain't got the time, I ain't got the attention span, I just want to see something quick. But long posts,
2 words in that board.
yeah, but long posts can work if you're a great writer, and you can learn to be one. I don't want to hear any excuses like from people. You can learn to be a good one. So video content across LinkedIn and Facebook, define your end goal. Like, do you want to be the educator? Do you want to be the value adder, the shower? What is it? And who are you aiming for? And then you can inform the kind of content you put out. But I think documenting content is big, because yes, it's good to sit here and say, right, here's a video, 3 tips how to raise finance. It's very useful, great value. But I think what's more value is when you're on site and you're like, right, here's a tour, see that crack, it's not structural, see the doors, they need to be shaved, blah, blah. All this, everything you're saying for someone is incredibly useful. So yeah, that's my kind of advice. My advice is also get started, pick a color scheme of some fonts, make your branding slick, not too slick, but slick. And just start posting, because like your first podcast, shit. Your first post, everything is shit. But you need to do your first one to let it be shit and have no followers, to then eventually create amazing stuff.
I couldn't agree more. I did a presentation not too long ago talking about social media, and I actually put a screenshot of my first ever YouTube video on there. And I mean, it was the lighting. Not that I'm not really hot on lighting and sound, as you can hear. Anyway, but I mean, I looked miserable on that video. We were talking about man buns earlier. I used to have one, so I had.
I can see you with one.
I had that, and then a few hairs were like sort of popping out. I had a mirror. I actually had a mirror in the corner of the background. I mean, how stupid is that? And I just looked absolutely miserable. So I always say, look, this is my first one, so yours is going to be better than this anyway. So go out and do it. I like that. But you also mentioned P word, podcast. I couldn't let you go without asking you about Tej Talks. How did that come about, and how important do you actually think that, we talked about platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, there's others, TikTok, that seems to be the big one at the moment. How important has the Tej Talks podcast been for you? And do you think that everyone should have a podcast, like some people say, or do you think it's very specific and you should only do it really if you're in a certain industry or trying to attract a certain client?
Sure. So it's been priceless for me because it's a podcast. It's also more than that. It's my entire brand and what people recognize me for. I was wearing green once. Can you believe it? And like, I've had people walk past me who I know me, and we're like, oh, like, do we know this kid? And I'm like, it's me. So this is so, this is so much like my brand and what people recognize me as. So I think for me that the most important part is that it's allowed education for free. There's no adverts, there's no sponsors. It's just like, right, here's education. Because I, went on some courses. I didn't pay for any courses, but I won some tickets, and I was like, these people aren't current. They're missing some details. There's got to be a better way. Efficiently, I hate courses sitting on the skinny little chairs, eating the crappy little sandwiches with like white bread. That's not me. I can't deal with that stuff. I need to be sitting here and listening and just doing my thing, right? So I thought, let me give people that. So started a podcast. And since, I think it's been up for about 15 or 16 months, 294,000 listens. Highest episode has got 3,500 unique listens in 92 countries. So how on earth could I reach that many people across the world? I couldn't. Like, yes, Facebook ads, but not as organically as this, and not as value adding as this. And I learn, right? Every hour I have, I learn something. So it's been incredibly useful. It's definitely been, the brand is the reason I've got investment, as well as hopefully my personality. But the podcast has definitely been a touch point for investors. And it's great getting a message, like being like, someone said to me, Tej, I met, someone went on your podcast. I really liked them. I went and met them, and now we're building 10 houses together. And I was like, so he was like, yeah, we met literally through your podcast. And I was like, there's a lot of those stories that no one tells me about, no one bothers to tell me about. And that for me is like, that makes it worth it. Because I'm like, I just connected two people. Or someone said, oh, I've been trying to do property and, you know, I just couldn't get into it. But you listen to your podcast, gave me the motivation. Now I've got my first house. But all these stories, and you're like, this is actually impacting. It hasn't really sunken in how impactful it can be. So yeah, totally priceless. You know, helping people like this is powerful, because it isn't. Yes, it costs me a bit, but I mean, it more costs me time than anything.
Yeah.
Should everyone have a podcast? No, because well, every industry can have a podcast. With that, I don't care what topic. I promise you, we can make content. We'll do it. It will be a podcast. Should everyone have it? No. I mean, not everyone is suited to public speaking or communicating in this manner. Not everyone can commit. You know, if you're going to put out whatever, one a month, or you know, let's not say that, because it depends on your podcast. But if you're not going to commit or be consistent, you're going to be forgotten. You're not going to get the same number of listeners. You're going to be frustrated. What's the point? Whether you're consistently once a month, once a day, whatever, you need to be consistent, because you owe it to yourself and I guess your listeners to put some good content out there, because there's so many podcasts that exist, and a lot in property, which I didn't realize. You know, you really do need to do something to stand out. It's a lot of work when you could spend the same amount of time on Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, building a personal brand that would get you money just as much as a podcast would. So it's not for everyone. I do have a free podcast guide, tej-talks.com/ebooks. No email sign up. Literally, I'm so lazy. It's just free, 18 pages of it. But some people have read it and said, you know what? I'm going to pass. I'm going to give it a miss. And that's what I want. You know, I want people to take what they need from it. So not everyone needs it. Not everyone should have one. But it is possible in any industry to have one. But I think getting some, not public speaking experience, but just making sure you're a good communicator, you can speak clearly, you can ask the right questions, getting interview experience is really, really important, because you have to be listenable, right? So yeah, it can change things for you, but people ask me and I'm like, do you really want a podcast, or do you really want to raise money? Because if it's the latter, then just build a brand, you know. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, actually, because I've spoken to people and they've said, oh, you know, Sam, you're on this channel, this channel, this channel, you're like, podcast coming out, all this kind of stuff. You know, why are you doing all? And actually, it made me think. I've always wanted to do this, because when I was at university, and when I was at university a long time ago, and I made shows using a camera, because we didn't have camera phones, called That University Show. And I used to literally follow people around, and we used to ask questions, we used to do stupid stuff, and it is on YouTube somewhere, I am sure, in the archives.
I'm going to find this, but I'm going to find this.
Yeah, Essex University. And I did that. I went to university and did a master's. I had a radio show. You know, I did all these things. It's been in my blood. I worked at a TV production company for a long time. So for me, it made perfect sense. It's a great way of doing it. You're creating stuff and having the YouTube channel makes sense. But I think the point you just made is absolutely spot on. If it isn't what you want to do, it will probably come across, because your love for it, you know, it's going to be obvious that you don't have the love for it, and you're just trying to pitch. You know, you're not just trying to make content for content's sake, insofar as you just enjoy making it. And I think that's a really, really important point, because a lot of people are jumping on social media and just chucking stuff out there almost for the sake of it, when they don't really believe in it and don't really love it.
Yeah, I agree. You have to love it. You have to be passionate. Well, I say you have to, but it will come through if you are, and it's a lot better when you do enjoy it. So pick a platform, pick something you enjoy.
Absolutely. I think that's a really positive note to finish on, to be honest with you, Tej. So I'm really happy you came on. Thanks very much for your time. But before we go, we've mentioned a few of them, but where's the best place for people to get in touch with you, follow your work? Obviously the podcast, which we'll link in the show notes, but in terms of other ways, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you to learn about property or personal brand?
So Instagram is probably where I'm the most active, especially on my stories, because it's a great platform. So tej.talks, it should come up straight away. LinkedIn, Tej Singh, Facebook, Tej Singh. But again, if you type into Tej Talks podcast into any social media, it should come up. I'm not on TikTok yet. I do like dancing, so I'm thinking maybe I should
Hey,
do something there. So
an account. I've seen that, so don't worry.
I do. I do have an account. Maybe I was just bored one time. Let's do it. But watch that space. But yeah, Instagram and Facebook are probably the best places.
Excellent. We'll make sure that all that's noted below so people can get in contact. But Tej, look, thanks very much for taking the time to speak to me today. I'm eternally grateful. And yeah, we'll catch up again soon, I'm sure, mate.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Appreciate it.